I'll let you all take your seats. I am Ken Newhouse. Real quick, I'm the committee man from the Wild Horse Township, just about a minute and a half south of here. Just quickly, I want to thank all our sponsors, the Hammond Institute, Chesterfield Township GOP, Citizens for Joe Carica, Committeewoman Eva Guest, St. Charles County Liberty Project, Don and Jeannie Gosen, Dot O'Hara Pinkham, Annette and Ted Reed, Brenda Webb, and then the hosts for tonight's debate are No Mo Sales Tax and Missourians for a Consumption Tax or Retail Sales Tax, as they like to say. Now, John.
Thank you. What a great crowd and a great opportunity here. We have a lot of fun planned for everyone and a lot to learn. And I'm probably going to learn more than anyone else. I've been reviewing these issues back and forth. I still have questions here. I've been doing a lot of reading and more research in regards for tonight. So I can't think of a better opportunity for all of us to have a better understanding of the issues that are here. First of all, we're going to have our panelists give a brief introduction, starting with my left and working around. Tell everyone who you are.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Wetter. I'm very humbled to be here tonight. Paul Kirkman was originally supposed to be in this seat, but he had to fly to DC and he asked me to fill in for him, so I'm really excited to be here. I'm glad you all came out. Like I said, my name is Joe Wetter. I'm a candidate for the Republican Central Committee in St. Charles County. I'm a founding member of St. Charles County Liberty Project, and basically I'm a student of philosophy, history, and economics, and particularly the Austrian School of Economics. So I'm trying to bring in the Austrian perspective tonight.
Hello, I'd like to thank everyone for coming today to listen to our debate on taxation. I'm State Representative Andrew Koenig out of the 99th District. I have all of Manchester, all of Valley Park, all of Twin Oaks, some unincorporated area, and a little bit of Fenton. I'm also chairman of Ways and Means Committee, and I have my wonderful wife, Brooke, here today, and also my parents. And I'm also a small business owner, and I have three boys, Jeremiah, Isaac, and Gideon.
Well, I've already introduced myself a little bit. I'm Ken Newhouse, the committeeman from the Wild Horse Township right down the street here. I was elected as the youngest member of the St. Louis County Republican Central Committee last year at the age of 19. I'm 20 years old now. I jumped the bridge there, so I'm officially into the 20s. I'm currently a junior at Lindenwood University in St. Charles. I am a broadcast communications major, and I either want to do politics or sports after I graduate, and I am the co-founder of No Mo Sales Tax, representing tonight here.
I am Lloyd Sloan. I'm a co-founder with Ken of No Mo Sales Tax back in July. I looked over the program, what they already told you about me, and I guess I will have to cop. Yes, I did graduate from Harvard. Please don't hold that against me. I tell people that, believe me, I know why you hate Harvard a lot better than you know why you hate Harvard. And let's get on with it. I'm looking forward to a great event, and back to John Brunner.
Great. I tell you, this is a lot more fun being in this position than where those guys are. I'm going to tell you right away. I'm already smiling. I have nothing to worry about. I let these guys do all the work. We've a little bit of adjustment of the format tonight to kind of keep it interesting. I put myself where I've been there and thought of some things that would have been a lot more fun when I was running for office in terms of some of these multitude of debates that I was in. So we're going to try some things that have never been tried before, and if it doesn't work, we're going to move quickly to the next point of the agenda. But first of all, we're going to start with opening remarks. That'll be 4 minutes, and then we'll have rebuttals, pretty short, a minute. Then we're going to do something called the cross-examination, round one. If that works, we're going to do a round two. And basically the format would be as though you were watching on TV on the U.S. House of Representatives, and you have the questioner there asking the guilty parties or whatever you want to talk about it and challenging their issues. And basically we're going to give 3 minutes for one person to be in charge, cross-examining the opposition, and we'll rotate that for another round. Finally, we're going to have questions from the audience, and we have a few up here. We have white cards. At any point in time during this debate, you want to bring them right up here. I'll grab them. I'll stack them up here. We could use a couple more good questions because some of the questions are duplicate, but they'll also be in random order. And we're going to do a little bit like Bill O'Reilly tonight. We're going to have a question will be given specifically, it's all laid out. There'll be 1 minute to respond to the question, 1 minute response, and then the final word. And we'll go to the next question, right on down the line. So basically, whoever gets the question and whoever responds, the original answer gets the final word. And then closing remarks. And it'll be fun going forward here. So, just to set the stage here, did a little research in some of the bullet points of what these folks represent. And so, here's my understanding, and we're going to learn a lot more. Why the fair tax? Well, you got to keep your entire paycheck. You got to keep every dime you earn. Social Security and Medicare funding, the benefits won't change. You'll get a tax refund on basic necessities. We'll talk about maybe advance refund. You pay tax and only what you spend. So if you don't spend too much, you're going to have a lot more to keep in your pocket. Everyone pays their fair share, and the IRS is no longer needed. Well, why not? Why shouldn't we go down that direction? Well, the fair tax replaces all the taxes, but it gets a sales rate of up to 23%. Regressive taxes are a poison for society, do nothing to help the economy. The fair tax creates new tax collectors. Thousands of individuals and businesses have never collected taxes will have to get involved in the tax collection business. May turn some of those folks into criminals because they didn't take the necessary resources in place to collect those taxes. And, this rebate given out will make people even more dependent. And finally, the fair tax eliminates thousands of jobs, particularly at the IRS. I don't know, there'd be a lot of sympathy there, but anyway, so this is the big picture for both sides. I took it at the 20,000 foot level. These guys are going to take it right down to ground level, and we really look forward to going on this evening here. So we'll start, and if you don't mind me being casual tonight, I can say the Honorable or the State Representative, or I can just come forward and say, Andrew, give it a shot. Will Andrew work? Okay, go ahead. Andrew, you're on.
All right, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. What I'm advocating is a consumption tax, not specifically the fair tax, although I think at a national level, the fair tax is a good model. The reality is taxation is damaging economically. It removes capital from the markets by confiscating people's money and restricts freedom. This nation and state was formed to protect people's natural rights. Article 1, Section 2 of the Missouri Constitution says this, that all constitutional government is intended to promote the general welfare of the people, that all persons have a natural right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the enjoyment of gains of their own industry. That all persons are created equal and are entitled to equal rights and opportunity under the law. That to give security to these things is the principal office of government, and that when government does not confer the security, it fails in its chief design. In order for government to do these things, some taxation is necessary. There are primarily 3 types of taxation. You have property tax, such as a real estate tax. Currently, the state of Missouri does not have, from a general revenue perspective, have a property tax. Obviously, there's local property taxes. There is a consumption tax, such as a sales tax. There is a tax on production, such as an income tax or a value-added tax. Now, there are other taxes, such as excise taxes, fees, and tariffs. I want to focus primarily on the first 3. When one is advocating eliminating one of these taxes, by default, they're supporting either one or both of the other 2 types of taxation. Whatever is taxed is going to be harmed. If you tax property, then the state will be discouraging people from acquiring property. If you tax the production of products, then you're going to be discouraging job creation and discouraging manufacturing in your state. If you tax consumption, you'll be discouraging people from buying things in your state. The best tax system is one that is used for collecting revenues of the state, not manipulating markets. It should be broad-based so we can have the lowest possible rate. And we need one that does the least amount of damage to its citizens. The best tax system is one that is transparent, neutral, simple, maintain a broad base, and one that is stable. Missouri's budget is roughly $8 billion from the general revenue perspective. About $5.6 billion comes from the income tax. $1.9 billion comes from our 3% sales tax. The total sales tax Missouri has is 4.225, but 1.225 is not general revenue. And the remaining about $300 to $400 million comes from other miscellaneous taxes. I'm very much opposed to instituting a new property tax here in the state of Missouri. This is because you would be handing over a piece of your property to the state. People would never own their own property. It would give the power of the state to take people's property for failure to pay taxes. I'm also very much opposed to an income tax. According to the IRS, there's between 15 and 17% fraud. It is used to manipulate markets. Here in Missouri, there is $629 million in transferable tax credit, which is no different than corporate welfare. It is destructive towards job creation and wealth. The income tax is 50% less, or 50% more volatile than the income tax over the last 50 years here in Missouri. This makes it hard for governments to budget. I don't necessarily like the consumption tax, but it is the last tax standing. The consumption tax removes individuals from complying with the tax code, and only businesses would be administering the taxes. So I support eliminating the income tax and support a broader sales tax.
Okay, thank you. Ken?
All right, everyone, this is my third time introducing myself. This is a great crowd here tonight. It's amazing to see all you guys here. Once again, I'm the committee man from the Wild Horse Township, just a couple minutes south of here. I want to thank all of you for coming to this debate tonight. I want to thank Representative Koenig, Joe Wetter, Lloyd, Sloan, and once again, a big thank you to our moderator here tonight, John Brunner.
Okay, you're using a valuable time.
I know.
Go right ahead.
It's my speech. Don't worry. Tonight marks a big night for Republicans in not only St. Louis County, but for all of Missouri. This debate is the first of its kind for Republicans in Missouri because of the contrasting beliefs we all have up here on the stage. I am up here tonight representing an organization Lloyd and I founded back in July called No Mo Sales Tax. Our organization is fighting to end regressive taxation here in the state and getting the government off the backs of small businesses across Missouri. I spent part of my summer this year in the state of Oregon. Oregon, some of you may know, has no sales tax across the state. That, of course, appealed to me and helped influence the creation of our organization here in Missouri. Oregon currently ranks number 10 in projected job growth in 2013, sitting at 2.2%, according to Forbes magazine. Oregon's tax structure is fairly equal for everyone. The lowest 20% for non-elderly taxpayers in Oregon pay about 8.3% of their annual income. The top 1% pay roughly 7%. Oregon's highest state income tax rate for the top 1% is at 9.9%, which I think is way too high, and was reduced from 11% in 2012. While the top 1% of Oregonians pay a high income tax, the lowest 20% in the state pay the highest personal property tax rate of 4.4% of their income, and they do have an excise tax at 2%. I'm not advocating that Missouri takes the same route as Oregon because truly I don't like any methods of taxation, as all Republicans shouldn't. I believe that taxes should only be for basic necessities of government, and all Republicans of course agree on that. Now, my opponents on the other side of the table tonight want to replace the income tax in Missouri with a consumption tax or retail sales tax. That's what they're fighting for tonight. Our friend Representative Koenig sponsored a bill here in Missouri last year that would effectively eliminate the state's income tax by, I believe, January 2nd, 2017, and then while raising the state sales tax to 7%. There are a few things in there that would be exempt, like food and other stuff that I won't go into. The state sales tax rate with municipalities combined cannot exceed 10%, according to his bill. This bill, of course, would require a constitutional amendment to be voted on by citizens of Missouri in order to repeal the state's income tax. I am personally opposed to this model because it would vault Missouri into the top 10 most progressive states in the country. A lot of individuals want to model Missouri after Tennessee, and Tennessee doesn't even rank in the top 10 for job growth, according to Forbes magazine. Our organization has come up with a plan to lower the state sales tax by 1% over a period of 5 years. Missouri would see a revenue loss of roughly $1.87 billion, which is what, according to Andrew Koenig, said is the 3% collected each year for the state. Over the past 5 years, Missouri has seen an increase in sales tax collection by over 4%. Though the state rate hasn't changed, municipalities have jacked up rates, and some combined rates within the cities and state exceed 11%. My goal is, of course, to help give tax relief to every Missouri resident, and cutting sales tax does just that. This is a plan that both Republicans and Democrats should like. It helps out working-class Missouri more, but still gives tax relief to everyone. Once again, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and I look forward to a great debate. Thanks.
Okay, next on is Lloyd.
All right. Thank you, John, and thank you all for coming here again. There's one other person I want to thank before we start into, and that's Brenda Webb. Her name hasn't been mentioned, and she can people hear me? Is a mic too loud? Okay. She basically did the program and did a lot of organization on the venue tonight, and I wanted to make sure she got credit for that. When we first started putting this together, I thought, here is a debate on the best way to tax, and it's something like a debate on what is the best way to die. Would you prefer to die from cancer, or would you prefer a heart attack? And obviously that makes it problematic in such a debate. No one up here is advocating higher taxes on anybody, so we're trying to explore the notion, first and foremost, what is a fair tax? Fundamental to that question, and this is similar to the question of asking what is a just war sometimes. War is not a good thing, but sometimes you justify it. Same thing with taxation. What I need to underscore, my perspective, how much we tax is far more important than how we tax. There is no magic formula or no magic way to tax that makes it all fair and good. So yes, given a choice between a 2% income tax and a 20% sales tax, take the income tax. That's the fundamental perspective. We went through the different ways to tax, and there's income and there's property and there's sales taxes, and they have all various goods and bads associated with them. But the one thing that wasn't mentioned that I want to mention is regressivity. That's one of the main problems that I have with the sales taxes. They do end up disproportionately on lower incomes than on higher incomes. That is probably one of the main objections to sales taxes and consumption taxes. The other problem I have with it, aspect of it, is that it co-opts businesses into being tax collectors for the government. And I prefer that government do its own dirty work. I think it's much better. That's the kind of business-government partnership I think we do not want. And it can even be hidden for that reason. We all have gas taxes, which is a form of sales tax as well. Get into the specifics. That's pretty much hidden from us. We don't know how much when we go to the pump is the tax, because it's gathered by the business, and they actually pay the tax, and they are the tax collectors. But in order to get my perspective, I want to tell you all the story as to how I came to the position. I mean, I was raised by Goldwater Republicans. As far as I know, I'm the only one on this panel who actually voted for Ronald Reagan, because I'm old enough to have done that, and I voted for him in a primary once even, so it goes pretty far back. All my life, I heard that the Democratic Party was the party of big government, and there is some truth to that. But if you listen to Democrats, they'll tell you, no, we're not a big government. We're not for big government. What they will tell you is, you're Republicans, you're just always for the rich. That's your problem. You're always for the rich. And so these two are, because we then deny it. Republicans say, we're not for the rich. What are you talking about? We just want the government smaller. That's where it is. Well, there's some truth that Republicans do tend to structure taxes, help the rich more than the poor. What I really want is both smaller government and more equal wealth. And I thought to myself, how can I get there? Where is that magic formula? We've all been told that's impossible. What I'm advocating, and I could use from you all a better name for this, but I'm advocating bottom-up tax cuts. Not this top-down approach, but bottom-up. And my main problem with the sales taxes and what our group is about is cutting the sales taxes because they're regressive and the poor pay more. I would take the same approach to income and property taxes.
All right, now we'll finish with Joe with opening remarks.
Thank you, John. I'm an advocate of the free market. Why? I see the free market as liberty and freedom in action. Okay, the free market consists of acting individuals that go about their ways peacefully and voluntarily to pursue their own happiness. We enter into contracts, we enter into mutual exchanges for goods and services for money. Taxation is wholly different. Taxation is force, it's compulsion, and it's the threat of violence. There's no such thing as a good tax. A fair tax or a neutral tax. Taxes are bad, inherently bad. Taxes distort the market, and they redistribute wealth from the private sector into the coffers of the state. So there's no such good thing as a good tax. Now, when thinking of a system of taxation to fund the necessary functions of the government, I don't look at what's going to be the most efficient form of tax collection, or what's going to be the most revenue-generating form of taxes, or what set of taxation is going to benefit a certain group in society. I ask myself, what's going to be the most ethical? What is going to be the most consistent with the principles of liberty? As Andrew said, our founders instituted government to protect our liberty and our property. So ideally, we want to have a system that funds that institution that's going to be as much consistent as possible with it. It's not going to be consistent because taxation is the antithesis of liberty. But through a little bit of mental gymnastics, I believe that the retail sales tax, not a sales tax on every stage of production, but just a sales tax at retail level, is the least bad. The sales tax is a simple flat tax rate that, unlike on the income tax, where you're taxed at the percentage of how much wealth and value you produce, the sales tax is a flat rate on the price of a good that you purchase, that you may not even purchase. So you sort of determine yourself how much you pay to the government. Sales tax is a one-time tax, unlike with income taxes or property taxes. You don't have the IRS beating on your door on April 15th with a sales tax. You paid it at the retail counter. You don't have an envelope coming from your local government bureaucracy threatening to take your property if you don't pay this tax. The sales tax does not reduce a fixed amount of your money income. So the individual determines in the best way he sees fit to save and invest or to consume, whatever he or she would like to do best. So, also, the sales tax captures tax revenue from everyone, including travelers that come in from overseas to illegal immigrants crossing the border. I like the idea of people paying for government services if they're getting them. Police, military, courts, I like that idea. So, I favor the retail sales tax, and I think it's the least bad. Thank you.
Now, Andrew, do you agree with all that, what you just heard, or do you have a different opinion than your rebuttal?
I believe the evidence is in. People are going to seek out economic freedom. Over the last 50 years, there's been 10 states to implement new income taxes. And the results have been absolutely devastating. 9 out of 10 lost gross state product. So if you compare a snapshot prior to them implementing income tax, and then look what happened afterwards. 9 out of 10 lost gross state product. 10 out of 10 lost personal income. So if you compare how much money people made in that state prior to implementing the income tax versus afterwards, and compare it to how the U.S. overall, 10 out of 10 lost personal income. 10 out of 10 lost population relative to the United States as a whole. So I believe the evidence is in. People are going to vote with their feet, and they're going to seek out economic freedom.
Joe, you agree, I guess?
Yeah.
You're on for a 1 minute rebuttal. Or we can pass if you're ready to move on.
If we could maybe go in that direction and just skip me and come back.
I'll give you a chance to think about this. Lloyd?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I don't have to think before I speak most of the time, so I'm good to go. I'll wait for a cross-examination on some of the things that I've written down, and I'll probably, rather than rebut entirely here, there's clearly some agreement on all of us. But the one thing I want to continue to underscore from my opening remarks, we on the conservative, the Republican, the small government side have been losing to the progressive movement for now a century. The income tax is 100 years old. this year. And the Federal Reserve is 100 years old this year, and we've been losing and losing on these issues. What we need is a fresh approach. We need what Bill Clinton used to call triangulation. And this is what's fascinating to me. I listen to Republicans and Democrats, and Republicans say they want to cut taxes, and Democrats say they want to help the poor. So why are they opposed to cutting and abolishing sales taxes, which does both?
All right, Joe?
Give it to him.
I know the headline is going to be Joe Wetter hates the poor tomorrow in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch when I say this. But I'm not a bleeding heart when it comes to taxes, lower income people, okay? It's the lower income people that typically vote for big government liberals, okay? And these are the people who aren't paying for the government that they're voting for. So I'm not ashamed to say, if you want this government, you're going to pay for it in some way. So with the sales tax, doesn't matter.
Ken?
Real quick here, I just wanted to point out to Joe, I'm not going to attack him or anything, but you said you wanted a retail sales tax. Has anyone shopped here at the new outlet malls here in Chesterfield Valley? Raise your hand if you have. Okay, yeah, some of you have. There was a store here in Campbellville, I'll keep it real short. A bunch of different stores there were charging the wrong sales tax. And so my problem is having retail sales, or small businesses, or just any business collecting sales tax because they're not smart enough to do so. Okay, right here, it says a Nike store down there, and Hanes, was taxing 8.9% for their store. It should have been 8.3%. They were overcharging for over a month when those stores were there. And some were undercharging. Some were taxing 7.9%, and the tax rate was 9.4%. If they can't be held accountable for what they're being taxed, then why should we have sales tax?
Ken, I can see you're already leaning into the second period of cross-examination here, which is fine because you're first on the list. So you now have, you're the moderator now for a full 3 minutes, and you can engage Andrew and Joe to your pleasure.
All right, I'll just go ahead and say with that question, why do you support, if businesses cannot collect the correct amount of sales tax revenue, or the percent that they're supposed to collect instituted by the city and the state? I'm sure the state's fine. Oh, sorry. For the city and state, why would you tax small businesses and larger businesses when they can't collect the correct tax amount?
Well, the whole point of a consumption tax is we're trying to remove taxes from the production of goods. So that way there's no discouragement from producing products in your state and keeping businesses on a level playing field when they're producing products and competing with other states. Any state that brings in a product to sell in Missouri would be on a level playing field. And saying that the business shouldn't be collecting taxes, they do the exact same thing with the income tax. With the income tax, they're collecting taxes. And evidence has shown there's far more fraud in the income tax than the consumption tax.
To answer your question, things happen. Do we want to trust government bureaucracies to do it too? Bad things happen with government bureaucracies as well. So, nothing's perfect.
All right, this question's for Andrew. I was going to say, why does this tax structure you have for HCR 25 have to be revenue neutral when there are over $500 million in tax credits given out annually in Missouri?
I am definitely opposed to the high taxation and the taxation of everything. But whenever you're dealing in Jefferson City, if you can remove one argument and make the tax cut a different bill, then you will be attacked. You won't be attacked on that specific point. Obviously, I want to reduce taxes, but I don't want that to be part of changing the tax structure. I mean, if I could, I would, but it just adds another element, make things more difficult.
I was going to say this too. Would you support a prebate if HCR 25 was passed?
At the federal level?
No, the state level.
My preference is to not do a prebate, and the biggest reason for that is because of the small amount of money. I mean, writing everybody a $50 check in a state There's a cost of bureaucracy there, and I am more in favor of something more like a flat tax rather than a progressive tax.
And as we know, Missouri's income tax rate, if kept like this, it's currently at 6%, collected at above $9,000, if I'm correct. Would you support a different graduated rate structure for the Missouri income tax if it wasn't switched or lowered from 6%?
What you see with the current income tax is, the last time we changed our rates, it was back in the 30s. So essentially, every time you have inflation, you have an actual tax increase. And that's really unfortunate. But I mean, we do need changes. I advocate lowering the rate first.
All right, Joe, you on the next 3 minutes, and you have the floor to challenge your position here.
I only really have a couple questions. This is for both of you. If you guys oppose the sales tax, what taxes are you guys for?
Yeah, I think that's the wrong way to put it, what taxes are before,
Yeah,
but the basic plan that I have is to try and lower the taxes starting bottom up, and that's the key insight. So, and then obviously several things have to happen to come there, and you got to cut the government back. So my preference, probably the same as everybody up here, is to cut the spending on the government, to at least freeze it. You can't do that as long as you have a welfare state trap. And you can't, I have no idea why we're pretending to help the poor and the middle class. If you want to help them, stop taxing them. Good article, yeah, I mean, that's your first step. That's step one. Then you can pretend that you're helping people, but not if you're taxing. No, you're not helping anybody. Government is one of the few institutions that can go out there and break someone's leg, then hand them a crutch and say, see, without us, you couldn't walk.
So you support, not that you like them, but you're in favor of a progressive income tax? And
Absolutely progressive, yeah.
Property tax.
Also property taxes. I would abolish the income tax in Missouri under 50,000 income, bang. We do what we have to. You want to be revenue neutral? That's your problem. You either cut the government or make it revenue neutral, raise the rate on everybody else, but I would definitely take a radical bottom-up approach to cutting taxes. I do the same for property taxes. Abolish the first 100,000 of property tax.
I'd like to remind the audience who else supported progressive income taxation. That was Karl Marx. It was one of the planks in the Communist Manifesto.
And Hitler supported sales taxes.
I just want to say another thing, that, you talked bad about the progressive era with the Republican Party and that, but yet you're advocating progressive taxation. It seems a bit contradictory.
Well, so did Thomas Jefferson, so did Jesus of Nazareth. By progressive, I just mean that those who have more pay more. That's all progressive taxation is. Regressive taxation is those who have less pay more. They pay at a higher percentage. Surely you don't advocate that a poor homeless person pay the same rate as Bill Gates.
What I'm advocating is that if he goes and buys a stick of gum, he's treated equally as Bill Gates. I view progressive taxation as evil. We have a government that is supposed to treat everybody equal, and then we have this idea that the amount that you can pay, you're going to be treated differently. I reject that idea.
Taxation is not equal anywhere. You understand that the rate of taxation for dividends and capital gains is lower? That Mitt Romney paid a 15% effective tax rate? That's probably lower than half this room. Taxation ain't equal.
Oh, all right, Lloyd, we'll give you a chance to own the floor and own the 3 minutes.
Oh, do I get to ask him questions? Well, let's keep going then.
Now, and let me give you guys some advice. If the other side goes long-winded, they're just taking up your valuable time. So feel free to inject and cut off any answers that you don't like, and be able a chance to say what you feel is important.
I appreciate that advice,
So,
John.
this is battering going back and forth. I know you all are very polite and everything else, but you all strongly believe in your particular issues, and we also have round 2 to go. So you're just warming up. All right, Lloyd, start that timer.
Okay, so start the timer on me. And well, I'll follow up with Joe, and then I do want to get to Andrew as well. So I have some questions for both of you. But let me clarify that point, because you're not you're not truly advocating that a homeless person pay the same amount of taxation or the same rate as Bill Gates, are you?
When he goes to buy a stick of gum, yes. But
Well, he's the same rate with me on the income tax, it's just that there's no income tax until you get the 100,000, it's still the same law. He does buy more gum than Bill Gates, so proportionately, his income, he's being taxed more of his income than Bill Gates. That's how it works in practice.
maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. That's his choice.
Do you see why Democrats, I don't know that you hate the poor any more than I hate the rich, because I don't hate the rich. I will be accused of doing that, same as you will be, as you did accuse me, right, of hating the rich and being a Marxist, I guess.
No, I'm not saying that you're a Marxist, but I'm just saying that Marx favored that income tax.
He called for a progressive income tax. That is
Yes.
correct. Yeah, it's in the Communist Manifesto, as did Ronald Reagan and I don't know, half the other people I can name. So, the reason is because sales taxes are regressive, because they do hit disproportionately on the elderly, on poor, on people who spend more of their money. So, I mean, that seems fair to some people, but it seems unfair to others.
Yeah, it seems like Ben Franklin said it best when he said that if you keep people comfortable in poverty, you're not going to do anything to drive them out of it. So, in a way, getting rid of this sales tax is keeping people comfortable in poverty. They're not paying for the government. The government's taxing other people and redistributing it to them. And why go to work? Why better myself? Why dig myself out of the gutter if I'm not liable for anything?
Yeah, okay. We probably won't keep beating that horse. Let me, first of all, I want to applaud Andrew in the time I've got left for quoting the Constitution of the state of Missouri. That's the first thing I want to get out of there. So whenever I hear a state legislator quote the Constitution, it's almost like they're taking it seriously. And that's great, It's very refreshing. You had said that all taxation is damaging, and I agree with that. What would be the least damaging type of tax? If that's actually measured, would it surprise you to learn that property taxes are the least damaging to economic growth?
Well, part of the problem I have with property taxes is people don't own their property. And I don't want the state coming in and taking people's property. If you have a property tax, it's like the state owning your property. So I'm very much opposed to that.
But I can tax that property when you sell it?
Also,
How do I not own the property? If you tax me when I sell the property, then I don't own it under that same logic, right?
but the state can't come in and take your property after that.
I guess it would if I didn't pay the sales tax. Of course, I've sold it, so I don't have it. They take it from the person who didn't pay the sales tax. Anyway, we're done with time, so we continue.
All right, Andrew, you get the chance now to take control and ask them the tough questions.
Do you support, either one of you, do you support the income tax?
Well, given the state of our
Over the sales tax. That's what I see, is if you're advocating eliminating the consumption tax, then therefore you have to support the income tax, because that's where we get the majority of our revenues from.
I would support a 2% income tax over a 10% sales tax any day of the week. I would. In Missouri, because you cannot eliminate the IRS in Missouri. You can eliminate a form maybe when you fill out taxes at the end of the year in Missouri, but yes, in Missouri, nationally, it might be different. We're not talking about that tonight. But statewide, yes, I would support a 2% income tax if you take that over a 10% sales tax rate any day.
But we have more than a 2% income tax.
I understand we're at a 6% rate. I'm just saying if you want to go revenue neutral,
Right.
what we're doing here, I would not support a 6% rate over what you were proposing for a 10% rate.
Well, the 10% would include local revenue.
Yes.
So, we're talking about state revenues, so you're comparing a 7%.
Yeah. Okay, getting back to your 7%. So we're comparing 7% to 6%. Currently, since I don't pay much of income tax because I'm still one of the lower income earners, I probably wouldn't see it. But if we were to keep the same thing in Missouri right now, I probably would support eliminating that 6% income tax over keeping a 7% sales tax. But if we were talking about a higher sales tax, if it didn't turn out to be revenue neutral, like who's the guy downtown, the big millionaire who was supporting Rex Steinfield, he was calling for a higher sales tax. His bill was around 12 to 15%, if I read correctly what he wanted. He wanted a 12 to 15% sales tax rate in order to stop the income tax rate in Missouri. That I would be opposed to. Your logic, I would cut the income tax and keep that 7% sales tax.
Yeah, I can. I mean, my answer is going to be similar to that, but as again, I would cut the income tax bottom up. So I'm not, and I don't like, I'll keep the rate flat. I'm not looking to have a progressive rate of taxation, but rather create a floor below which you are unregulated. I would do the same approach with regulations. I would do it with taxation, and I would start cutting the benefits top down. So if you're a millionaire, you get no benefit. You get no Social Security. You get no Medicare. You've got to start creating again in the country a middle class.
Well, we're talking about the state of Missouri. I mean, the state of Missouri doesn't hand out Medicare.
Correct. Well, we do hand out benefits, although we are what are we? We're a pimp for Medicare, I guess. Is that what we do? I mean, we have a role in it. We get money from the government. In fact, a lot of our budget in Missouri, correct me if I'm wrong, comes from the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, we have about a $24 billion budget, and only a third of that is general revenue, another third is dedicated funds, and you have another third that's federal funds.
So we just let Ben Bernanke pay for this whole thing. I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I would. The rates are critical with me, and then also I don't like the sales tax because it is always regressive.
All right, we concluded a pretty effective round one here on the cross-examination. You guys are just starting to warm up. I really like the dynamics here in the back and forth. It helps me to follow the arguments, and there's some very good, convincing arguments. We're going to go again. Like I said, we haven't tried this before, but so far it's really bringing out a lot of good ideas. So Lloyd, we're kicking it off with you.
Oh, wow, I'm back to asking more questions.
You were on.
I want to explore this notion because I've heard it before with Andrew, so I want to continue that you don't own your property because there's a property tax. But at the same time, then do you own your business if there's a sales tax? Do you own, the right to sell you this book because the government's going to force me to put a tax on it?
Well, with a consumption tax, it's really the consumer paying the tax. All taxes, flow back to the person. So even with a property tax, it's the individual paying it. And with the business, it's not the business paying it, it's the consumer that's paying it.
Yeah, that's true. The property tax is generally paid by the owner, unless you're renting the property. Then you could argue it's paid by the renter.
Right.
I suppose if you want.
If you're renting, then obviously that tax, the business has to make money, and that tax is an embedded cost, and it'll be included in the rent.
Now, if I had on the ballot a proposition that would abolish all sales taxes in Missouri, you would oppose that proposition, I guess. You would not vote for that
If it
proposition.
was a straight up elimination, no, I'd support that.
Yeah, I figured that. I just want to, and how do you react then? I'm curious, just to approach of cutting taxes bottom up rather than top down, which has been the approach since Reagan for the party. That we generally cut taxes working at the top rather than working from the bottom.
Well, I mean, it all depends on how progressive of the system you want. I mean, of a tax system, tax structure you want. So, I mean, in Missouri, our top tax bracket when it comes to the income tax is 9%. And I think, pushing the majority of Missourians in the top tax bracket, and I would support cutting that top rate.
Does it surprise you when you hear politicians say they want to help the middle class and then turn right around and tax them? Does that not seem incongruous to you, contradictory?
I mean, taxing the middle class? No, I think we need to reduce taxes.
Yeah. So, the bottom-up approach would get to the middle class first, right? If we abolish it under $50,000, you've done a lot to help that guy who makes $40,000 a year. I don't know if you could do more to help him, frankly. He doesn't care about your programs or your TIFs or your,
what I'm concerned about is economic freedom and what taxes do the most damage. I mean, whether you're cutting the top or the bottom, great. I want a system that promotes economic growth in our state. And the income tax does not do that. It is destructive towards job creation.
And I just cut it. I just abolished it for half the state. Are you opposed to freeing half the slaves if you can do it? I mean, it would seem like a rational thing to do.
Well, if you're advocating eliminating the sales tax, then you are supporting our income tax, which is the wrong approach. If you want to cut taxes by $1.9 billion, then you cut the income tax.
Yeah, I'll get back. Well, I'm done. I'm sorry. It's red. Oh,
Good.
Thank
All right, Joe, you're on, and you have the mic.
This question goes to both of you guys. I see on your guys' website and Facebook and that you say that cutting or eliminating the sales tax will essentially grow the economy. I'd like to hear your guys' explanation on how essentially consumption is going to grow the economy.
Walmart. You know, if I abolish the sales tax in Missouri, everybody on the Kansas City retailers on the Kansas side might as well shut down, right? We're going to grow that part of the economy for sure in Missouri. Same thing in St. Louis. It is a boom for auto sales, particularly, you know, big ticket items for sure. But you would definitely increase sales in Missouri if you get rid of the sales tax. We just sat here and I think every single person went on record saying that taxes slow growth. So do sales taxes. I don't know if you're familiar with the Japan example. They doubled their sales tax in Japan back in the early 90s. It led to what they call the lost decade in Japan. I mean, they were flat as a pancake based on that. They're getting ready to do it again, so they didn't learn the lesson the right first time. But if you look at tax studies, the International Monetary Fund, in particular, is the one I relied on, the worst tax for growth is the income tax, and I agree with that. So I'm not really looking to increase income taxes. The second worst is then sales, and the least worst tax for growth is the property tax. It stands to reason because when you tax property, say land in particular, we'll use that as an example, if you're not doing anything with the land, you're going to get taxed the same as the guy next to you who's doing stuff with his land. It literally forces people who are leaving resources idle to put those resources into use. That's a difference with the property tax than you get with both the income and the sales tax.
Joe, I was going to say that, just restate the question one more time. Go ahead.
I'd like a comprehensive understanding of how consumption grows in the economy. Because essentially that's what you guys are essentially trying to subsidize consumption by removing the tax.
Well, according to the Institution on Taxation and Economic Policy, Oregon ranks number 10 this year in job growth at 2.2%. They ranked second in 2012, according to Forbes magazine, a little higher, so 3.5%. They do rely heavily on an income tax, which it's too high in my opinion. But I do like the idea of no sales tax because businesses, I believe, are free. And I have seen when I was out there, tourism was very high in the state. I did see a lot more sale going on with the businesses they have there compared to here. It was a very short trip, but I do agree that they benefited more from that. They do rely heavily on an income tax, but that's how they generate most of their growth.
Thanks.
All right, we're moving to Andrew, and it's interesting when you guys back and forth. What's the least pain, which is the least painful way to die? How do we survive in terms of dealing with the whole issues of taxes? But I really appreciate the way you're taking it back and forth here. And I challenge you guys that on both sides that sometimes these assumptions that one makes, don't forget to get down and do those assumptions and challenge those as well. Andrew, you're on.
All right, I heard it said that having no sales taxes would promote tourism. Is that correct? All right. Currently, Missouri is the 14th lowest sales tax state. And as far as revenue goes, we are 42nd. There are states like Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Nevada. I mean, you can go on and on and on. All have higher sales taxes. What about those states? Do you see those states having their tourism business falter because of the consumption tax?
Well, first of all, we're not Florida. We don't have oceans and beaches and everything like that. That's why they benefit from tourism. And I can flip that on you and say that Missouri ranks with the municipalities. I understand that the state is very low, 4.225%, actually 3%, with the parks and everything else taken out of there. I can flip that on you and say that Missouri is in the top 10 with their highest tax rate going above 11% with sales tax. That's very damaging in my opinion.
According to the Tax Foundation, Missouri sales tax is around just over 7% if you average across the state. And many of these states, their average sales taxes, to include the local rate, are higher. Like I said, Florida, Texas, Nevada all have higher sales tax, even if you include the local rate.
Well, I'm not averaging, I'm just taking the highest rate across the country. That is 11%. I work in downtown St. Louis, and a lot of businesses down there are charging over 10 and 11%. Most restaurants are including 11% on their sales tax. So I'm taking what is the highest sales tax in the country. Currently, Tennessee has the highest sales tax rates on average, if you want to say that. But taking the sales tax rates that are the highest in the city and state combined for that given area is what I was talking about.
Do you have anything to add to that?
What was the question?
On sales tax.
Oh, how
Missouri?
would it help tourism?
Yeah.
I don't think it helps tourism a whole lot. I think it's a factor in it, but I would consider it. As you say, Florida's going to have tourism, and they run the state that way. So I think you would help retail sales big time. I can only imagine if you abolish the sales taxes on automobile sales, what happens to auto dealers on the Missouri side in both Kansas City and St. Louis. It clearly is a boom. About tourism, I don't know. It's a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, dealing with the sales tax on vehicles, that actually had to do with a Supreme Court case that basically people weren't collecting the use tax. Really, if you go across state lines, you're really not collecting sales tax, it's actually a use tax. And some of the municipalities don't have a use tax, the state of Missouri does. So that's a little bit of a different argument.
Are you asking if we're wanting to cut the use tax?
Yeah, I mean, I equate the two, honestly.
Okay, guys, we got the red
I was just
card right here. We got the red card, you won't be able to get into that answer, but we'll give Ken a chance to charge forward, and maybe in your 3 minutes, we can deal with that.
Andrew, I came to you last April. I don't know if you remember sitting down with me. I brought you a bill called the Missouri Roadway Recovery Act. It rose the gas tax by 8 cents over a certain period of time and then lowered sales tax. You said you liked the idea, but you pointed out to me during that time that most Republicans would oppose it. Would you oppose it, or would you still be in favor of that?
What was it? What did the bill do again?
The bill lowered the sales tax, the state sales tax, by a certain amount, or percent. I think it was like a 0.25% over a certain amount of time, and then rose the gas tax 8%, or at 8 cents. I called it revenue neutral. Would you oppose that, or would you still support it?
Well, with the gas tax is dedicated to the roads. It's a user, almost like a user fee, which is not a bad idea to fund the roads that way. I don't know if I would support lowering the sales tax. It goes to general revenue and put it into the gasoline tax. I don't think that necessarily makes sense now. I would not.
The institution on taxation, we're going to cut away from sales tax here for a second. I'm going to talk to you about property tax in Missouri. The institution on taxation and economic policy states the lowest 20% of Missouri income earners pay 3.1% of their annual income in a personal property tax rate, while the top 1% pay 1.6%. Would you do anything to change that?
Well, when it comes to the state general revenue, there is no property tax. Those are all local tax rates. And they're going to vary widely from taxing jurisdiction to taxing jurisdiction.
This is for both of you. I know I discussed with you last April that there was a bill that was going into the House and Senate that was a 1% increase over 10 years in the sales tax rate, the state sales tax rate, to go from 4.225 to 5.225%. That would raise roughly $8 billion, I believe it was, for new roadways. Would you still support that?
I specifically oppose that because that is a straight up tax increase, and I did what I could to defeat it. Thankfully, we had Ed Emery in the Senate filibuster it, and I supported him in that. We don't need to be raising people's taxes.
Yeah, I don't support any tax increases. I'd like the sales tax to be very, very little. You know, and this is something I agree with Lloyd on. You have to bring taxes down. And so, yeah, I don't support any tax
Andrew, I know we discussed, we had a 1% sales tax cut in our current plan real quickly. Would you support that plan that cut $1.9 billion from the general revenue for the state and paying for it with the current extra funding we have in Missouri, the $400 million?
Yeah, I think the best way to fund a tax cut is, right now we have, the corporate tax brings in $289 million, and we had $629 million in corporate tax credits redeemed. So you could actually lower the corporate income tax from 6% down to 2%, and it wouldn't even affect the revenue. Because, a lot of these tax credits are transferable. So let's say I give Joe a tax credit, and he doesn't have a tax liability, so he sells it to someone else. That's no different than the state of Missouri writing him a check. So to say that there's no revenue out there,
All right, that's a good response. We're right now here at the seventh inning stretch. I'm going to ask our timer to set the timer for 1 minute, give everyone a chance to stand up, and we'll jump right in for the last portion. So in 60 seconds, we'll begin again. Good chance to stretch here. Now, just to remind everybody, we're going in. We're going into the question period, and this is going to be done a little different. I really like the way the gentleman handled this cross-examination. I think you were very fair, polite. We learned a lot going forward on this whole process. We got a lot of questions. At first we only had a few. We have more than we can handle here. So these have been chosen on a random basis. And on a random basis, this is how we're going to be going forward and asking the questions. We're going to have to really get our timer here because this is going to be relatively quick. And again, the process here is the first question will go to one of the panelists. There'll be a chance for a response for 1 minute, and the final word by the person who first answered that question. So, for example, the first question will be going to Joe. The response will be going to Lloyd, and then Joe will be able to finish up. Each period has 1 minute to go. You can use your time or not use your time. And the timer is going to be very busy with these 1 minute series here. So we're going to move quickly. And if we have a little bit more time, we're going to save it for a particular announcement or clarification at the end here. All right, the first question here, this one goes to Joe. Since property owners are a small percentage of citizens, why is it fair to tax them and exempt non-property owners from a sales tax that everyone would pay?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
That's what.
Sorry, okay, since property owners are a small percentage of citizens, why is it fair to tax them and exempt non-property owners from a sales tax that everyone would pay? No comment.
All right, that's a difficult question. It's not
What
quite.
I mean by no comment is that's a great question, and that's kind of what I'm advocating for. If we're going to have a government, okay, and everybody, for the most part, agrees. There's some people out there that don't believe the government should exist, but for the most part, everybody agrees that we have to have a government. To me, everyone should have some stake in it, and if people did have a stake in it, I think that people would be knocking on the door in Jeff City and knocking on the door at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., saying, lower my taxes, shrink the government, get the government out of my back. The people down at the lowest income earners would be marching in lockstep with the people that are the highest income earners if everybody had a stake in the government.
Lloyd?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with charging everybody $1 if that's what everybody wants, I guess. This is about taxing the poor at a higher rate than the rich. That's what sales taxes are about. I will be fair to the fair tax people, incidentally, at the national level, recognize this issue, and they have what they call a rebate, which they actually give money back to people in order to compensate for the regressive nature of sales taxes, rather than the Republican response traditionally, which is, who cares if the poor pay more, right? We applaud that the poor pay more. That's okay with us. You wonder why we lose. Let me quote instead another source, to whom much is given, much is expected. That's another notion of fairness that we were all taught at some point in our lives. Most of what government does is protect property. And frankly, if you got more property, you're getting a lot more benefit from this government than that homeless guy. So maybe you should pay more. Maybe that's also a notion of fairness. I guarantee you many of your fellow citizens see it exactly that way.
Joe?
There's a bunch of problems with property taxation, but I really only have time for one. Property taxes on the value of your property are very arbitrary because no one knows the true value of that property until there's an exchange that takes place. So when the government bureaucrat comes whistling around the neighborhood and says your property's valued at X, he doesn't know. Plus that opens up to all kinds of bribery and who knows what else. So property taxation should be gone. Thank you.
All right, good, Joe. Now, again, some of these questions are really directed to one side or the other, and just because you're the first person to answer, you don't necessarily obviously have to agree or disagree, but you can take that question and direct it any way you wish. Now, Andrew, this question is to you. What is to prevent the sales tax from going higher and higher?
Well, for one, the people of Missouri would have to vote on it. Our Constitution says the people of Missouri would have to vote on any tax increase. But we have the same situation now. What's preventing a progressive income tax from going higher and higher and higher and trying to only tax the other guy? I think that's a wrong system. The income tax is destructive. You have not only do you have the 10 states that have implemented new income taxes, and we saw what happened there, we also can compare the 9 states that have no income tax with the 9 states with the highest income tax. And the no income tax states are doing a whole lot better. They have higher gross state product. They have higher employment growth over the last 10 years. They have population growth. They actually have tax revenue growth a lot higher than the high income tax states. And that's because people seek out economic freedom. And if you want jobs and businesses to produce things, you don't tax them.
Ken?
Go ahead, repeat the question one more time for me, John, please.
Okay, all right. What's to prevent the sales tax from going higher and higher and higher?
Oh, I'd have to agree with Andrew here. It's people voting on sales tax increases. I mean, well, one thing you could say black markets could do that. But, I mean, people vote on it, and taxes are increased when people vote on the sales tax. I mean, I do believe that there are too many municipalities that are going outside of their boundaries and taxing people a little too far. I do believe the city of St. Louis is going a little too far with some areas taxing at a rate of 6.6%. 6.625% is the highest rate I've seen for a local sales tax. But I do believe that something that we've never seen here, a sales tax cut, is what we should see here in the state of Missouri, just to get people from finally realizing, oh, a penny here and a penny there, or a half cent here, is eventually going to hurt their checkbook. I mean, it's going to hurt eventually, and people need to realize that sooner or later.
Andrew, you have the final word?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, sales tax at the local level, people continue to vote themselves these tax increases, and I think that's bad for our citizens. The government's growing too big. But the reality is, like I said, the income tax is destructive, and if you want to get rid of the sales tax, that means you have to be supporting the income tax. That's just the reality. And we can look what happened in Kansas. Kansas had a massive tax cut, and they cut their income tax. And what happened? All the jobs were created in Kansas. There was a net zero gain in Missouri side of Kansas. And it was because they cut the income tax. Kansas has seen 15,000 new businesses created over the last year since they decided to stop taxing businesses and stop taxing production. So, like I said, people are going to seek out this economic freedom, and they're going to produce things where it's the lowest cost.
Okay, Lloyd, this question is for you. This is an interesting question. It's sort of asking a little bit from both sides. And would you support a hybrid system? that it eliminated income tax for earners under 50,000 and raised sales tax at a level to be revenue neutral, exempting food, medicine, housing. Would you support a hybrid system that eliminated income tax for earners under 50,000 and raised sales tax at a level to be revenue neutral?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to phrase it. Presumably, if we take a bottom-up approach to cutting the income tax, then those lower incomes will be able to pay the higher tax, and so, you can do it that way. In general, I do prefer the way sales taxes are direct as opposed to the privacy concerns of an income tax. That's actually a tough trade-off for me, and I'd have to give it some thought before I'd really commit one way or another. I do think, the revenue neutral aspects of this bother me, and so I don't really try and do things revenue neutral. I would prefer to get rid of the sales taxes and the income taxes bottom up. That's clearly the preference, and that would be my trade-offs, go in that direction instead, and get the burden off people. Quit pretending that you're helping poor and middle-class people, and at the same time, you are taxing them. That is an elitist, progressive view. We are buried under it for 100 years. We must break free of it.
Andrew, your response?
Oh, it's my response. I would say no to that question because I think income taxes are immoral. Plain and simple, it's assuming the government owns your labor, and that's immoral to me. Secondly, on an economic standpoint, income taxes kill economic growth. They strip us of our ability to accumulate capital and save and invest. And that is the engine of growth. Capital accumulation, savings and investing. And when the government comes in and cuts off a huge chunk of our money stock every month or every year, what it does is it limits us and it causes us to demand our money now versus in the future. So we're going to value that money now because we have less of it. So we're going to be less likely to save and less likely to invest and less likely to accumulate capital. And that capital accumulation is the growth. It's the water on the seed of growth. So I would say no to that because the income tax is horrible. Thanks.
Lloyd, your response?
Yeah, we're going to beat ourselves around again and again. I will underscore my opening remarks. There is no magic way to tax that makes it okay, and this is going to be great. And so, yeah, let's just trade that income tax for a 20% sales tax, and that's wonderful. No, it's not. The amount of taxation is a definite concern. And just so you understand complexities here, Oregon, with no sales tax, only an income tax, was number 2 in growth. I guess last year? Yeah, it was last year. So it's not as clear cut as sometimes we make it out to look, all right? The reason that I really dislike the sales taxes are 2. They are regressive. They hurt lower incomes worse than higher incomes. I see that as no way is that a fair way to tax. And 2, they force businesses into being the tax collectors for the government. And I would rather free those businesses up. It does me no good to hear all taxes are immoral, and then I hear, well, apparently there is one tax we're going to support over others. Wouldn't be my approach at all.
Thank you, Lloyd. This question goes to Ken and Joe. You're slated for the response. A good one about liberty. Ken, what is the most detrimental tax to our liberty?
Good question. I would say, personal property tax. Of course, there was an INS study that did say that it created the most economic growth, but I would say that the personal property tax strips away our freedom of owning property. I personally hate the property tax in Missouri on automobiles, and I don't want to end up paying that at the end of the year, but I have to. I do think that is the one that hurts our liberty the most because it's the property we own, it's the property we purchased, and it's the property that we live on. I think the tax that I hate the most out of all 3.
Well, I would have to agree. I think property taxes are don't allow people to have their freedom. And that's one of the reasons why I don't support it. I keep hearing this thing about Oregon, and over the last 10 years, Alaska, Nevada, South Dakota, Texas, Wyoming all saw higher gross state product than Oregon. Employment. Over the last 10 years, employment growth actually shrunk by 3.3% in Oregon. So I don't think Oregon is necessarily the best example. Also, you can look at the data that the IRS tracks where people move to. More people move from Missouri to Texas, to Florida, to Washington State, far more than to Oregon. So I don't think Oregon's necessarily the best example for economic growth because they don't have a sales tax.
Okay, I was just going to say that they were number 2 in job growth according to Forbes magazine. Okay, that's what we were quoting from them for number 2 in 2012. They were number 10 in 2013 at 2.2%. But as you were talking about, it's the nature of our economy currently in Missouri, like you were saying earlier with people leaving for Kansas. They did cut their tax rate, but we do have higher sales tax rates with cities and state combined here in Missouri than Kansas does. People are still leaving because of that. We do have, I'm guessing, higher property tax rates locally. I know statewide they don't have it, but locally we have higher property tax rates than Kansas. And currently our income tax is higher than Kansas. So it is the 3 of these taxes that are probably making individuals leave Missouri to go to Kansas, Texas, Tennessee, and other places that don't have an income tax or have a lower income tax.
All right, next question goes to Joe. How about, folks from the back, we got enough questions to last us about 2 more hours, so these are great questions. How about dropping Missouri's income tax first, like Texas, Florida, etc., before dealing with the sales tax issues?
Yeah, I 110% support that. Again, I think income taxes are immoral. And again, the income tax is sort of the bane of growth, as I said, because it strips people away from capital accumulation and savings and investing that the economy so needs. And I'll yield my time.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say that Texas and Tennessee combined back-to-back ranked number 5 and number 6 on the top terrible 10 according to the Institution on Taxation and Economic Policy. The lowest 20% of income earners in Texas pay a rate of 12.6% of their income annually to the state. Tennessee, 11.2%. The top income earners, I'll say top 5%. The next 4% before the top 1% pay 4.8%, and then the top 1% in Texas pay 3.2%. And the top 1% in Tennessee pay 2.8%. As we've been talking all night about regressive taxation, these 2 states are number 5 and 6 in regressive taxation. So, with no personal income tax in that state, they're still getting a federal deduction in the state, in both states, even though they have no income tax. So they're pretty much just receiving money without paying any income tax rate. So I agree with a flat tax rate in the state. I think if we had to keep an income tax, I would agree with a flat tax. But I would personally lower our sales tax first.
Okay, yeah, and I'll just go back and say that I think income taxes are horribly immoral, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, next question. This is around the fair tax or sales tax issue. This goes to Andrew. How do you handle older retired people who have paid taxes in the past and now are on lower fixed income?
Well, a lot of people say that the sales tax is regressive and it hurts the poor. If you look at our current sales tax base here in the state of Missouri, we actually only tax about 35% of the base. And a lot of the basic necessities are actually exempt. As far as general revenue here in the state of Missouri, there is no tax on food unless it's prepared. So if you go to a restaurant, it is, but if you go to the grocery store, it's not. You have the local taxes, sure, but not from the state's perspective. Prescription drugs, medical services, rent, mortgage, all these things are exempt underneath the sales tax. You wouldn't be paying the sales tax. So this notion that is complete burden on the poor, I think, is somewhat false.
Here's the figures from the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, January 2013. The lowest 20%, this is Missouri state and local taxes. The lowest 20% pay approximately 5.9% of their income on sales and excise taxes in the state. The top 1% pays less than 1% in sales and excise taxes. Sales taxes are highly regressive. Apparently, we have to face a choice. I mean, I really didn't know how this debate would go. I did not expect the Republican Party to take a position, we don't care. That amazes me. I mean, it really does, and I'm taken aback by that somewhat. Say, we don't care if we tax the poor more. Is that really the position our party? Do you wonder that we lose? Do you wonder that we lose if that's the attitude we take?
Final word?
Like I said, we don't tax food. We're not going to tax medical services. We don't tax prescription drugs. People aren't taxed if they're paying their mortgage or they're renting an apartment. These things are not taxed. And what we need to do, is it good for that poor person if they don't have a job? If we're not producing anything in the state? We need to have a system that doesn't stifle economic growth. And that's exactly what the income tax does. And if people don't have jobs, then that's not good for that poor person, because we're making everybody poor.
Okay, question number 7. This goes to Lloyd. More of a general question, but it was in terms of how we get more growth, more businesses, and more people back here to Missouri. The question is, what can we do to get back high net worth individuals or businesses that have moved their businesses to Florida, Texas, or other, they use the term fair tax states, or maybe lower tax type of states? How do we get people coming back to Missouri?
Yeah, people or high net worth people, because I want people to come back to Missouri, and I want the economy to grow. That's one of the things. As I said, and I say this again, I don't think people care about growth as much as they claim. The tax that you put in, if you care most about growth, is property tax. That is the one that has the least impact on growth, and nobody, they sit there and tell me about growth, and then when I am told, oh, what tax should we use then? You use the property tax if that's your first priority. There are many priorities in taxation. There's no doubt about it. Growth is one of them. You cut taxes in order to grow an economy. And so it's how and who that we do this. I would end these tips. That hasn't come up yet, but I would also target these tips. I can't stand those programs. They target specialized interests. Let me give you the rule. If you're a good business, you don't need a subsidy from government. And if you're a bad business, you shouldn't get one.
So to get people back to the state of Missouri, abolish the income tax. And as has been said throughout the debate, we all don't like taxes. So the idea is to shrink government. You can't have low taxes and have a huge government. So what you have to do to get people back, bring businesses in, and bring people in, is to shrink the government so that you create an environment where people want to come here because they can save, they can work and build a nice income without having to worry about the government coming in and siphoning off half of it. So that's what I suggest. Just focus on shrinking the size of government, cutting the income tax.
Lloyd, any thoughts?
No, I'll go ahead and we'll leave it at that. I think we said our piece on this one. We all know how to grow an economy. I will underscore again, if your number one priority is growth, I'm going to call you on it and I'm going to say, fine, then you want to abolish income and sales taxes and live on property taxes, right? Everybody says, no, those are evil too. So apparently the only evil tax that we can live with is the one that is regressive and hits the poor the worst.
All right, the final question, my apologies to all of you who put some great questions in here. The responses, amazing, they're very good. This question will go to Ken, and we'll ask Andrew to respond. A little bit more extensive of a question. We all know, and I hope we all agree, that the 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution must be repealed. For those of you who don't keep up with the details of the constitutional amendments, this is the measure that was ratified in 1913, 100 years ago, that allowed and instituted the federal personal income tax after previous personal income taxes dating back to the Civil War had been declared unconstitutional. Whether we're talking about a fair tax or no Missouri sales tax, the 16th Amendment must go. Are there any similar efforts to amend the taxation clause of Article 10 of the Missouri Constitution? If so, please elaborate.
Well, first of all, I'll hit on the national level. I know I only got a minute here, but I'm sure that was a fair tax question. Well, that does have technically a 23% sales tax rate. Well, technically it is actually 30% as stated by the fairtax.org if you go into it. That repealing the 16th Amendment and eliminating the income tax, of course, would be revenue neutral as they state, but it's only revenue neutral because of the prebate. The prebate, I believe, is social welfare. I do not believe that people should be receiving just a monthly check. I think people would be too dependent on the government if there was a prebate check. I understand, like Andrew said earlier, in Missouri, it would be hard to just send out $20, $30, $40, $50 checks each month. But since we already have sales tax exempt on food and medicine and everything else, I think just eliminating the income tax in Missouri, and there's other stuff we can cut out. There's tax credits we can cut out. We can shrink the size of government. How about we reform our schools here in Missouri? 1/3 of the annual budget of the $24 billion goes to the schools. And I think that should be reformed, and I think some of that money should be going back into the state to help pay for tax cuts.
Andrew, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the prebate, I think, at the federal level, we do need to eliminate the income tax. But I think the prebate was put in there to diffuse the argument that it's going to hurt the poor. Essentially what it does is it says, no matter how much money you make, you don't pay a single dime up into the poverty line. Although sending everybody a check might not be the best way to administrate that, it's just a way to diffuse that argument. And I think if you wanted to get rid of the income tax, you almost have to have that in there
Ken?
at the federal level.
Is it okay if I delegate Lloyd wanted to put something in there, or do I need to?
It's your minute.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ken. Thank you. This one's right up my alley because when you start talking about constitutional amendment and the 16th Amendment, I do want to share with you an idea from the book I'm working on. The way I would replace the federal income tax, and we could do this at the federal government level, is actually an idea from Patrick Henry, going way back to the way it was done under the Articles of Confederation. What you do is you get rid of the personal income tax, and then you have the federal government tax the states. So you change that flow of revenue, which is what we have today, where the feds are buying off states and sending them money. And instead, a certain percentage of Missouri revenues would go to the feds, and that's how you would fund the national government. Then you let the states each decide the best taxation method. But you go back to that original Articles of Confederation, what they used to call requisitions, and say 20% of the Missouri budget would go to the federal government, and that's how you fund the feds. Get rid of the income tax that way. That's quite feasible.
Okay, we're coming right onto our hard stop time here and right on schedule. We have time for the closing remarks, and we'll go in the order randomly selected: Lloyd, Andrew, Joe, and Ken. 2 minutes for closing remarks. So,
Well, I hope everybody had fun, because I really did have fun, and I did enjoy the debate. And I have to confess that I get tired of, here's my pet peeve, I get tired of going to lecture formats all the time. I think we need a more exchange. I think it'll build a more vibrant party. These are disagreements among friends, and I want to underscore that. We're all small government people, I hope probably most in the room, but we need to find effective strategies for accomplishing that. So say, I was a big Reagan guy, I voted for Ronald Reagan, but at the end of the day, Ronald Reagan failed, did not succeed. Won an election, but we didn't shrink the government, we didn't put the genie back in the bottle. We have to face up, and that is the real problem to solve. So I hope that some of the ideas I've given you, particularly the bottom-up tax cut approach, which is my main message, is a game changer. It's a way, perhaps not as popular in this crowd, I do not know, but try it on your liberal friends. Try it on Democrats and see what they think about cutting taxes bottom up, and see if it isn't like taking a cross to a vampire.
Outstanding. Andrew, first of all, a word here. We really appreciate your work in the state legislature. You had an incredible session last time. You fought hard and diligently. You were undercut at the end game here by the governor. And I know you guys are ready to charge again and keep the battle going, so we appreciate the tremendous hard work that you guys are doing in Jeff City. Your thoughts here in closing?
I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and even though the governor did veto that tax cut bill we had, you can bet we're going to have another bill, and we're going to come out and try to pass it early to cut taxes. But the income tax has proven to be destructive. You have the 10 states that implement new income taxes, and we saw what happened there. We can look at the example of Kansas, and Kansas sales tax is actually higher than Missouri's. According to the Tax Foundation, it's 8.25%, and Missouri's is 7.46%. So people are crossing the border into Kansas because they cut taxes and because they cut the income tax specifically. And you have 15,000 new businesses in Kansas. You have 10,000 new jobs over the last year, only in the Kansas side of Kansas City. You don't have that growth on the Missouri side of Kansas City. And it's because they cut the income tax. We can look at the IRS data that tracks where people move. People are moving to the states that have no income tax. And it's because people seek out economic freedom. So we can have example after example. We can also compare the 9 states that have no income tax to the states with the highest income tax. People are moving to the states that have no income tax. We can come up with example after example. And it's really quite simple. If you're going to tax production, that is discouraging production. It's discouraging people from producing jobs. And so what we need to do is we need to get rid of the income tax. And if you're saying you want to cut the sales tax first, that means you're saying the income tax is okay, or it's less worse.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Joe, your introduction there with the Austrian School of Economics is dear to my heart. I was handed my first copy of Human Action by Leonard Reed at the Foundation of Economic Education a skillion years ago, and continued along that thought process all these years. Your thoughts in closing?
Yeah, thanks, John. I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and I'd like to thank Brenda and everybody else who put in the hard work and effort to put this on, and especially Paul Kirkman. I'm extremely humbled that he asked me to come up. This is my first time I've ever took place in a public debate, so it's been a great experience for me. I'd like to say that I don't hate the poor. Are we clear? So yeah, I don't hate the poor. I just believe in apportioned taxation, and I think our founders did as well, for the most part. But I just want to touch on one thing in closing. And I asked these guys to give their description on how consumption leads to growth. I reject the idea that consumption leads to growth, and I kind of spelled it out a little bit in my spiel about the income tax. It's the withdrawal of consumption that leads to growth. Robinson Crusoe, on his deserted island, did not grow his economy or increase his standard of living by just consuming the fish that he caught with his bare hands. It was until he withdrew from consumption and built a fishing net that he was able to capture 3 times as many fish so that he could withdraw from consumption even more to build a boat or to build a hut or to build spears for hunting. So the consumption didn't lead to the growth. It was the savings and the investment in time and labor, and most importantly, the capital consumption or capital accumulation that led to the growth. And the income tax kills that. Thank you all for coming, and be careful going home.
Well, Ken, you get the final statement here, and I think we're grateful that young guys like yourself are well prepared, ready for battle. because we got a long one ahead, and keep fighting.
John, thank you again for moderating this debate. I know it's hard to get you sometimes because you're a busy man. I really appreciate it that you came here, and thank you to your wife, Jan, out there, and I think she's here. I see her right over there. Thank you to her and your assistant, Karen, for putting this together. Thank you, Joe, Andrew, and Lloyd. This was a great event tonight. I really appreciated all you guys coming out here. This crowd, I mean, I didn't expect this many people. We have probably over 100 people here, and I'm really appreciative of that. Just a quick thing to point on for Andrew there. You said that everyone who wants to cut sales tax first love income tax. I don't love income tax. Cutting sales tax first was the 1% I approached everyone here with tonight, using the surplus that Missouri has from this year, which would pretty much pay for itself. And then I'm just going to say this, why haven't we tried to grow our way out of a sales tax cut when everyone with an income tax cut can grow their way out of it? I'm thinking any tax cut you can grow your way out of. But I know we haven't tried that since no sales tax cut has ever been in the state, as if I can remember. But once again, I want to thank everyone for being here. Real quick, I know the Fair Tax Organization, you do have some flyers out there. Okay, after this, we'll make a quick statement from them. They have some stuff out there. No more sales tax. We do have some t-shirts out there. If you guys would like to look at them and maybe purchase them, they are $15. They are going to our PAC just to help us do stuff and host this event. We do have a money tree out there that Brenda Webb set up. We're going to split. I talked to them tonight. They do have some campaigns coming up here. Joe is running for committee man in the township, first capital township out in St. Charles, and Andrew is running for re-election here again in 2014. So if you guys would like to make a donation, cash is fine, or if you'd like to write a check, no more sales tax would be for that, and then I will just distribute that to them at a later date. And once again, guys, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. You guys were great, and once again, thanks.
So, good job, fantastic, good to have you here. I know it's like to have to step in at the last minute for somebody, but I'm sure you made your side proud. You guys here did a great job of preparing this. I do want to say here, I had a hard stop and we're a little bit behind, and we have a good group here from the Fair Tax Organization. They want to say a few words, but I don't want to get into a second position back and forth in terms of the debates. But I would suggest that there's plenty of information, plenty of resources out there. I'm willing to turn this microphone over to you guys, if that's okay with you, or we can close this right now.
How much time do we have?
It's 8:35.
No, go ahead. She can.
All right.
We have a couple of minutes. That's fine.
Yeah, I just didn't want to be the guy in trouble here, that's all.
Well, thank you all, and this will be real quick. Fair tax has been mentioned many times tonight. It is a national issue. And I know many of you get a tax return, a federal tax return every year from the government, and I doubt that you consider that as making you dependent upon the government. That is your money being returned to you. And I'd just like to say, whether we're talking prebate nationally, which is what we do advocate in the fair tax, or whether the state would ever to issue a prebate, it is not making you dependent upon the state. It is simply a return to you of your tax dollars.
A response, or should we call this a night? Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to join you. Many good friends again. And I think these kind of discussions will do a lot to help further the cause of liberty. Thank you. Good night.